Welcome to Burn On, Not Out, the podcast for founders and CEOs who are done being the bottleneck. I'm Brooke Dukes, and each week we expose the structural patterns that slow execution, overload founders, and keep decisions routing back to the top. And we install clear decision rules, defined ownership, and operating discipline that scales. Let's get into it.
You have at least one meeting in your calendar this week that shouldn't be on there. Not because it's a waste of time, and not because your team doesn't run good meetings, but because the only reason it's scheduled is that your decision structure failed to answer a question that should have been answered without you. So here's what's going to keep happening. That meeting is going to keep showing up on your calendar every single week until something structurally changes. So today I want to describe exactly why that's happening. And I'm going to give you one question that you can run on any meeting at any time to tell you whether it should exist at all. But first, I want to tell you a story about my calendar and how I completely lost control of it for 16 years before I understood what was really going on. So for 16 years, I worked for a consulting firm. I wasn't the CEO, but I might as well have been, because I was the one holding everything together while a leader in the company quietly dismantled it. He was a visionary. I'll absolutely give him that. Brilliant in his field. The ideas were amazing. The mission and the vision was real. And in the beginning, I believed it completely. But what I couldn't see, what took me years to name, is that I had built my entire identity around being the person who could handle it all. The chaos, the pivots, the fires. I didn't just tolerate them, I needed them. Here's the part that I'm not proud of, but it's the part that matters the most. Because when everything was falling apart and everyone was looking at me to fix it, there was a part of me that felt good. Not the falling apart, the being needed, the being the one who could hold it all together when nobody else could. That feeling filled something in me, a wound I'd been carrying since I was a kid. The need to prove that I was worth something, that I was capable, that I could handle what other people couldn't. So I worked 12 to 15-hour days. I stopped eating right. I stopped exercising. I had blinders on. I could only see the steps that were directly in front of me because I was so overwhelmed. My health started to deteriorate. My relationships were deteriorating. I was irritable and exhausted, and I had nothing left for anyone outside of that firm. And I justified all of it, every time. Every Monday afternoon, we had a team call. Every Sunday, starting around 2 o'clock, the pit would arrive. I'd feel it in my stomach, that low, dull, dreaded building towards the next day. I didn't sit with it. I couldn't. I'd turn on the TV, I'd go out to dinner, I'd have drinks. I would stay busy. And I reserved my stillness for early mornings when I could control what I looked at. Sunday afternoons, I just needed to not look at what was coming, because I knew what Monday meant. The leader used those calls the way that some people use a punching bag. If a client account wasn't producing, it was the team's competence. If someone raised a question about the compensation structure, the equity and the bonuses that had been promised for years and never materialized, it became an attack on their loyalty. You just don't believe in the vision. If you did, you wouldn't be asking this. He knew exactly how to reframe, how to redirect, how to make a room full of intelligent, capable people walk out questioning themselves instead of him. The gaslighting wasn't malicious in the way that you would imagine. He wasn't happy either. He wasn't getting what he wanted. And he used that to stay inside of his own patterns. And we used it to stay inside of ours. I would argue with him on these calls. I saw my role as protecting the team, absorbing what I could so it didn't land on them. I watched my mother do that for me as a kid, stand between the volatility and the people she loved. I learned it as a survival skill before I understood that's what I was doing. The heaviest rock I can remember went into the backpack about 2/3 of the way through my time there. The team had spent months, not weeks, months, building an offering. It was exactly what we'd set out to create. Everyone could feel it. We knew the people we were going to help. We knew it. It was going to be amazing. The launch was just weeks away. And the leader met someone new, a new partner, a new opportunity, a new direction. And just like that, it was gone. Every hour those people had invested, every conversation about what this was going to do for the clients waiting for it, shelved, stopped. And I had to walk in the next Monday call and make it make sense. That's the one that I remember most because it wasn't the only one. Every pivot, every broken promise, every attack on a team member who was just trying to do their job, another rock. And I picked up every single one because that's what I'd always done. That was the role I knew how to play. I stayed for 16 years. I stayed 10 years longer than I should have. And I justified it because we were helping people, because I was growing, because the vision was always just within reach, because I didn't know how to stop. The first crack came at a company event. We were with the leader and a few others, and I watched something happen that I immediately understood and just immediately decided not to understand. A dynamic between the leader and someone on his team that I wasn't supposed to see. Something in me clocked it completely, and something in me filed it away under things I'm not going to look at. Because if I look at it, I have to act on it, and I'm not ready to act on it. I know now that that's the moment I started to leave. It just took 2.5 more years for the rest of me to catch up. And as I began to pull back, slowly, without fully realizing that I was doing it, he got angrier. The arguments escalated. Perceived pushbacks that would have been a minor disagreement a few years earlier became a major event. And eventually, he blamed me for the end of a decade-long relationship in his personal life, tracing it back to a conversation I'd had with his partner 2 years prior, a conversation I barely remembered. And that was the moment that I knew. Not because of what he said, because of what it told me about where he was and where I had been to have stayed that long. For the next 4 months, I focused on one thing: how to leave in a way that protected the people that I cared about, how to support the team through a transition, and how to take care of myself and still take care of them on the way out. Well, my body didn't wait for me to figure out the timing. I was in Michigan back to see my doctor for my annual physical. And he looked at my shoulder and he asked me, "Hey, how long have you had that rash?" And I said, "I don't know, week maybe." I hadn't really noticed it much. It itched, it hurt a little bit. And I'd been just moving through it, pushing through like I always did. And then he told me I had shingles. I had shut down my body so completely that I didn't register one of the most painful conditions you can get. I was just moving. That's how far outside my body I had gone. A few days later, I was back in Texas and COVID hit. My husband was still in Michigan. My mother was on her way to visit. I was alone and sick and terrified of giving it to her. And it was in that forced stillness, unable to work, unable to perform, unable to hold anything together, that I started to actually see it. The structure I had believed was holding the company together was built around me absorbing everything. I wasn't the solution. I was the system, and the system was destroying me. When I finally left, it felt like walking out of a room I hadn't realized was gray into a world that was vivid, colors I hadn't seen, a sense of relief so overwhelming it felt like grief and joy arriving at the same time. I tell you this not to process the past out loud. I tell it because I work with founders every week who are living their own version of this story. Different details, same structure. And the meeting that keeps appearing on their calendar, the one that shouldn't exist, is the most visible symptom of exactly that structure. So I want to give this meeting a name because naming it makes it easier to see. I call it the Founder Resolution Meeting. From the outside, it looks completely normal. a calendar block, an agenda, 3 to 5 people. It might be labeled a check-in, a project sync, a weekly review. It looks like business happening. But here's what actually happening inside it. Someone hit a decision the structure couldn't resolve. Ownership was unclear. Authority was ambitious. A call got made and someone second guessed it. And the whole thing got parked, waiting until the founder could weigh in. So a meeting got scheduled, and its real job, even if no one says it out loud, is to get you in the room to make or ratify a decision that should have been made by someone else. What those Monday calls were in that firm, and I could see it more clearly once I was out, they weren't really about the agenda. They were certainty meetings, safety meetings. Because when a structure is so unstable that the team doesn't know what decisions belong to them, they need a container. They need a room. They need a person they can trust to be in it so that they can keep moving. The meetings felt necessary. I believe the company would fall apart without them. And I wasn't wrong about the need. I was wrong about what was creating it. The need was real. The structure was the problem. The reason that this meeting is dangerous isn't just the time it takes. It's what it signals every single time it happens. It signals that unresolved decisions get a meeting. That when something is unclear, the right move is to wait for the founder. And over time, this becomes the default operating assumption. Ambiguity plus calendar invite equals resolution. Your team isn't doing this wrong. They're doing exactly what the system taught them. Here's the question I want you to run on every meeting before you walk into it. What structurally breaks for the company, for the customer, or the team if I am not in this room? Not what would I do differently if I weren't there? Not would I prefer to be in the loop? Not is this a topic I care about? What structurally breaks if I don't show up? If the honest answer is nothing, that meeting does not require you. It might still exist. Other people might still run it, but your presence is optional, not structural. And if the real reason you're in the invite is because a decision is going to float upward to you anyway, that is not a meeting problem. It's a structural problem. The meeting isn't just where the symptom shows up. Run that question this week, not on every meeting, just the ones that feel like they shouldn't exist. I'd be willing to bet the more than half of them don't have a structural answer. When you find the ones that don't cancel them yet. First, understand what they were trying to answer. Here's why these meetings keep appearing even when you know they shouldn't. It's not because your team isn't capable. It's because the structure defaults to escalation. When decision rules aren't defined, smart professionals manage risk by checking upward. It's rational behavior. When ownership is assigned on paper but authority isn't actually transferred, meaning people have titles but not real permission to act, they learn to pre-clear before moving. And when a founder has a history, even a short one, of stepping back into finalized decisions, the team learns something quickly. Decisions aren't final until the founder confirms them. None of that is a character flaw, not in your team and not in you. It's a rational behavior inside an undefined system. Here's what happens over time. The decision floats up. No one explicitly calls a meeting, but someone puts a check-in on the calendar because that's where these things get resolved. The founder shows up, weighs in, and the decision moves. The meeting worked, so next week, someone schedules another one. The meeting is the symptom. The structure is the cause. And this is why just canceling the meeting fixes nothing. So I don't want you to walk away from this episode and start canceling meetings without replacing what they were doing, because the meeting was answering a question. A bad question in a slow way with the wrong person in the room, but it was answering something. Remove the meeting without answering the question structurally, and the unresolved decision just finds another route back to you. So before you cancel the meeting, ask, what question was the meeting actually trying to answer? In my experience, it's almost always one of three things. Who owns this decision? What are the actual limits of their authority? Meaning, what can they decide without you? And where does that stop? And what does finalized mean here? Who says so? And when is it actually done? When you can answer those 3 questions in writing with clarity before the meeting stops being necessary. Not because you canceled it, because the structure answered the question it was trying to answer. That is the difference between removing a symptom and correcting a structure. One creates temporary relief, the other's permanent. I spent 16 years removing symptoms, carrying the weight of every single one. Building the correction I wish I'd had is not academic for me. It's the reason I built Success by Design. If anything in that story landed, the Sunday pit, the meeting that's really a safety meeting, the moment you realized you're the system, go watch the CEO Decision Reset. The link's in the show notes. It walks you through the full structural pattern and gives you a concrete tool that you can start using today. If someone in your world is living their own version of this story, share this episode with them. And when you're ready to install the full correction, enroll in Success by Design. Charter spots are limited to 15. And when they're filled, the founding rate is gone permanently. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Burn On, Not Out. If decisions are still flowing back to you, don't just take notes. Install structure. Watch the CEO Decision Reset to see exactly how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, structure before strategy.